I get so many people who tell me that I'm too tough on Ontario Premier Doug Ford, that, he's just a puppet, or he's just being pulled. And he's really a patriot. He doesn't like what he's doing. He doesn't like this. He's just a puppet on a string. Well, he is a puppet. He is a slave to the New World Order. We're all slaves to the New World Order. I'm a slave. We're all slaves. And we gotta fight. We gotta fight, okay? We're all living on the New World Order plantation. But don't give me that crap about Doug Ford is just a puppet. And, if you don't want Doug Ford, you want other people. I'll get to that in a moment. But I can use an example, which is, this is the history of how slavery was and how slavery has always been. There's always been that one person who is like the closest to the master. He's not a master himself, but he's closest. He's closest. And what Doug Ford is a house slave. Doug Ford is a domesticated house slave. Now, back in the antebellum period, when slavery was rife in the United States, you had field slaves and you had house slaves. Uncle Toms, as they're most now known. And, that's really not a correct term, because the old Uncle Tom from the book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, he laid down his life for the slaves. But then what happened is Hollywood, which is almost always ruins anything historical, they decided to portray Uncle Tom as someone who would fight for his master, because he was a house slave. And Aunt Jemima was a house slave. She was a house girl. But Doug Ford is a house slave. He's the New World Order's house slave. So that's why I'm going to start calling him Doug the Domesticated House Slave Ford. Because that's what he is. He's nothing but a low-down domesticated porch monkey. While we are out there in the fields, fighting for freedom, fighting for our liberties, fighting for our rights, fighting against this misinformation, fighting against this China virus New World Order, which misinformation, lockdown, restrictions. This virus kills less than 1% of people who have gotten it. Japan, which is a very intelligent nation, by the way, never had any lockdowns. And look, I don't count numbers. I don't count the cases. I count deaths. But Japan's cases are down. We could have played devil's advocate. They didn't have any lockdowns. But their cases are down. And by the way, don't talk to me about anything. Japan is a very intelligent nation. I'm going to sooner listen to the people of Japan than listen to Doug Ford or Christine Elliott or Justin Takei and Mattei Trudeau or Joe Biden. Those people couldn't hold a candlestick to the Japanese. That's a smart, intelligent society. If it wasn't for the restrictions put on them by World War II, they'd have taken over the world by now. China would have nothing on Japan. Japan would be raping China up the butt right now. China would be a slave. China. We talking about China taking over. It'd be Japan. And honestly, I'd prefer Japan. But anyway. And I don't mean to sound offensive or obscene, but I'm just trying to get you to understand that Japan, Taiwan, Sweden never had lockdowns, and their populations are just fine. But Doug Ford knows this. But Doug Ford enjoys this little power that he has. He's not a real power person. He's still a slave. George Soros, Bill Gates, the United Nations, the Rothschilds, the New World Order, the big pharma establishment, the medical establishment, the vaccine establishment, the media, the mainstream media, they don't like Doug Ford. They view him with contempt. They don't like Doug Ford, but he is graduated from a field slave and a revolutionary who was trying to fight the slave system and burn down the plantation, and he's graduated into a house slave. He has decided it is much more beneficial to him to not be with the field slaves like us, fighting the plantation, fighting Mr. Charlie, fighting the night watchman, fighting Miss Sally, fighting the... It's much more beneficial to him to get off of the field and be a house slave. It's much more beneficial to him. So Doug Ford, and I can see it. I'm very good at reading people. Doug Ford is enjoying this. Doug Ford is enjoying this. Every little thing they tell him to do, he does it willingly. And if you try to argue, he calls you a yahoo. He calls you small fry. Nobody who is a field slave like us would call us names like that and be so arrogant. Nobody who is one of us, who is in the fields trying to fight for our independence, would have sent horses and police officers to abuse and assault people at Adamson's barbecue and tie up their legs and put bags over their head. Nobody who is a field slave would do. Nobody. I don't care what you want to say. Nobody would do so. I mean, look at the examples. Look at even Donald Trump, for example. You know, Donald Trump has been playing along with this thing, but you can tell he's not a house slave. And the reason why Trump is not a house slave, but he's a stealthy field slave, Donald Trump is picking the cotton and he's cooperating with Master Charlie and Miss Sally, but he's sneaky. He's not like me, who's just taking a torch and throwing it through Mr. Charlie's window every other night and being lynched for it, like I was lynched at Adams and Barbecue. Trump is doing it a sneaky way. He could easily send the National Guard and the military out there when that lady was being locked up in Texas. He could have sent the National Guard out there to stuff. He could send out all sorts. He could do a lot worse to enforce this stuff. But he has been sneaky. I wish he wasn't so sneaky. I wish he was more active. I really do. And I think that's one of the reasons why he lost. I'll tell you that. I'm telling you. He should have come out and said, no, this is a hoax. It kills less than 1%. It's a real virus, but it's not as deadly as everyone is saying. It kills less than 1%. He would have won. I'm telling you, he would have won. But, let's not beat a dead horse. But he's not a house slave. I can tell by his body. Even Boris Johnson, even though I think Boris Johnson is a little bit... I think Mr. Charlie is trying to graduate Boris Johnson into a house slave. But some of the things that I've heard him say make me think he's not. But Doug Ford is a house slave. Brian Pallister from Manitoba is a house slave. Brian Higgs from New Brunswick, a house slave. Justin Ataki and Mac Daddy Trudeau is a house slave. Joe Biden is a house slave. Kamala Ain't Black Harris is a house slave. Barack Hussein Obama is a house slave. These are house slaves. I'm a field slave. Adam Skelly is a field slave. Kevin J. Johnston is a field slave. Trump, to a certain extent, is a field slave. Alex Jones is a field slave. Ron Paul is a field slave. We are field slaves. Belinda Carrollus from Ontario, the New Blue Party, she's a field slave. And we're fighting Mr. Charlie's plantation. We are similar to, have you ever seen that movie, Roots? Kunta Kinte? That's us. That's us. I'm not Toby. I'm Kunta Kinte. Doug Ford is Toby. I'm not. And I'll do everything I can to fight Mr. Charlie's plantation until we win. And we will. Because if they kill all of us slaves, then there's nothing else. There's no one else to control. But stop telling me that Doug Ford is a puppet and he's just following, he doesn't like it. He is a puppet. You got that right. You got that right. He is a puppet. But he's a house puppet. He's a house slave. I'm a field slave. He's a house slave. Doug Ford is, he feels it's more beneficial to him to be a house slave. He was a field slave once. But he has betrayed the field slaves who were fighting, who were active, and he's become a house slave. Doug Ford. Doug, the domesticated house slave Ford. He is a house slave. That's all he is. Just like you got house Negroes, Uncle Toms, porch monkeys, coons. That is what Doug Ford is for the Patriot movement. He is nothing more than a coon. He's nothing more than Uncle Tom. Uncle Doug, the domesticated house slave Ford. That is just him. And that's his legacy, because he's done nothing else. Really, he hasn't. Those of you who tell me, well, you'd rather Kathleen win, you'd rather Andrew Horvath. Let me tell you something. If you take out Kathleen Wynn's support for the sex ed curriculum, she cannot be aligned with Justin Pataki and Mac Daddy Trudeau. That's just right off the bat unacceptable. Anybody who is too close to the Mac Daddy, Justin Pataki-headed Mac Daddy Trudeau, the son of Satan, you lose my support right there. I don't care, even if you just saying he has good hair. Even if it's a joke, I can't support you after that. Even if you're jokingly being kind to the Mac Daddy, I can't support. He is the son of Satan, and he's not going to hell. He's from hell. He's from hell, and he was birthed by a sack of trash from Vancouver, Margaret Sinclair Trudeau, and what spawned was the son of Satan, not the son of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I don't even think that's his son to begin with on the earth. I don't even think that's his earthly father to begin with. I think Castro is his earthly father. But regardless of who his earthly father is, his real daddy is Satan. So if you support him, I can't, no. So she has to not support the sex education. If she were to not support Justin Pataki and Mac Daddy Trudeau, if she wasn't corrupt, and if she did all the things that she did in a cost-effective way, actually the answer is yes. I'd rather Kathleen win over Doug Ford. Because Doug Ford has done nothing as Ontario Premier. Kathleen did more, and I'm not supporting Kathleen. She's corrupt as all hell. But I support her over Ford. I think she did. I don't support her. She did more for Ontario. OHIP Plus helped so many young people get a hold of their medication. That's a good thing. Could have been done a better way, but it's a good thing. Ontario Retirement Pension Plan. She tried to get that through, to get seniors more money. That's a good thing. Could have been done a lot better. I have plans for all these things which are costly, but it's still a good thing. She did it out of the kindness of her heart. She didn't have to do it. She didn't have to do that to you. No, she couldn't, but she did it because she obviously wants Ontario to be strong and successful and good in her own way. And I'm not supporting Kathleen. Just listen to me. Don't unsubscribe. Don't take the channel up. Don't dislike the channel. Just hear me out. Just listen to me. OHIP Plus, Ontario Retirement Pension Plan, liberalized the liquor industry, liberalized it. Infrastructure payments, tried to expand the GO to Bowmanville and up into Markham and up into Niagara Falls. She did that. Or she tried to. Doug Ford actually came in and he tried to reverse all that. What has Doug Ford done as premier that's beneficial to Ontarians? I can't think of it. Okay. Buck a beer. Let me tell you something. That's insulting. Don't tell me buck a beer. That's insulting. A buck for just giving alcohol to Ontarians. That's not beneficial. That's not something of. That's not something that's good, beneficial. Revolutionary. Like Bill Davis or what's his name, the Ontario Premier Robarts. He gave us OHIP. Pearson gave us CPP, even though CPP is a mess, but still. Brian Mulrooney, free trade. I'm not a big fan of how it was done, but it's something revolutionary, something that he did. Jean Chrétien, balanced budget after surplus after surplus after surplus after surplus, as he liked to say. Stephen Harper, richest middle class in the world. We were once the richest middle class. Two people have done nothing ever since they were in power. Doug Ford and Justin Tackett, Mac Daddy Trudeau. I can't name anything of note that they've done. I mean, even Pierre Trudeau, the Charter of Rights and Freedom. I mean, Doug Ford hasn't done anything of that that's a shining, that'll go down in history. Buckabeer isn't going to go down in history books. Okay, so he lessened the Toronto City Council. That doesn't benefit anybody outside of Toronto. And it doesn't even benefit the people of Toronto. Look, and I supported it because I don't like those city councilors. But he didn't do that for the people of Ontario or Toronto. He did that out of spite because they were so bad to his brother. Okay, fine, fair enough. I don't care. But really, the Toronto City Council doesn't have a lot of power. They have as much power as the Ontario Premier says they do. So really, it was unnecessary. And okay, you could say, well, it saves money or, we're not paying so much. But the people of Toronto are still paying a lot of taxes and stuff just the same way. And again, they didn't want it. So, all of that really was unnecessary. So you got Buckabeer and the Toronto City Council. Okay, what else is there? Sex ed. He said he was going to repeal sex ed. He didn't repeal it. Children are still being taught there's more than 2 genders in Ontario schools. So he didn't do that. He tweaked it around a little bit. It's not as vulgar, but it's still there. Okay, the Green Energy Act. He did not really fully repeal the Green Energy Act, You know what the Green Energy Act was, Ontarians? That is when McGuinty and Wynne, and that's one of the reasons I just really couldn't stand the Liberals back then. They decided that they were going to invest more in renewable energy, and they were going to pay these companies any amount of money that they wanted to put up some solar panel or whatever, and they were going to charge that money to our hydro bill. That's what that was. Now, he got rid of the past contracts, but he didn't get rid of all of the contracts. There are still contracts out there that are just waiting to be signed and put in. He didn't get rid of those contracts. He got rid of future contracts, but he didn't get rid of the past ones. So we're still paying out of our hydro bills for contracts that should be ripped up. And don't give me this thing about, if you rip up the contract, you have to pay for that contract to be ripped up. No, you don't. No, who said you do? All the province has to do is put in a notwithstanding clause, say, hey, we're not giving you anything. This is a new government. We didn't sign for this. Where's my signature on this? Where's my signature on this? I don't see it anywhere. Go out and go hit the road and put your solar panels somewhere else. So Doug Ford hasn't done anything as Premier. Nothing. Buckabeer doesn't mean a damn thing. That's useless. And it's even more useless now that the beer stores and the liquor stores and all that stuff are, it's a lot harder to get to them now. And our jobs are being taken away. He hasn't created jobs. He's losing jobs. Lost GM. He could have saved them. He could. I gave you a plan on how to save GM. He didn't listen to me. So Doug Ford has done nothing as Premier. So if you don't tell me, would you rather win? Win at least gave us OHIP Plus. At least she tried to widen and create more GO stops, GO transit, which is good. Infrastructure jobs, that's good. Liberalize the liquor industry. Ontario retirement pension plan. Those are good things. Could have been done better, but still, it's good. But if you get rid of the sex ed curriculum, you get rid of the support for Justin Trudeau, Tacky and Mac Daddy, you get rid of the corruption, I'd rather win. Because Doug Ford has done nothing, and then you tell me, well, Kathleen Wynne would put us in lockdown the same way. She'd probably do worse. What more worse could be done than what Doug Ford, Uncle Doug, the domesticated house slave Ford has done? What more worse could she possibly do? Curfews? Okay. Curfews. Look, that doesn't mean anything when all the things are closed. It really doesn't. When it comes to this lockdown, I think that she would do the exact same thing that Doug Ford, the Uncle Doug, domesticated house slave Ford, is doing. There's nothing worse that could be done to this province. Nothing. Nothing. And I'll tell you this too. I think maybe, I'm not saying maybe she'd be more generous with the amount of money that we get. I don't know. But this is not a time to penny pinch. If you're taking our jobs away, you better give us some money. A lot of money too. You're taking our jobs away. You're forcing us to live off the government. You better give us some dough. And if there's one thing that she was good at, it was giving dough. I mean, I'm just saying. So, no, I'm not a fan of Wynne. She deserved to lose. She ruined the province. She gave us sex ed curriculum. She supported the green energy. She was corrupt as all hell. She was no good. She was a bad premier. No good. But Doug Ford has done nothing. And I will also say he's a bad premier as well. I'd actually say he's worse. I think Doug Ford is actually worse. This thing is awful. The way he has dealt with this pandemic is awful. He's worse than Wynne. Far worse. I think the only other premier who could actually be worse than Ford is Bob Rae, who gave us Ray Days. That's the thing with socialists. They like to pretend like the government can do everything, but then when the government runs out of money, the first people that get screwed are the small people, i.e. nurses, teachers, police officers, all that stuff. Bob Rae is a perfect example of why socialism will never work and doesn't work. But that's what I've got to say on Doug Ford. Uncle Doug, the domesticated house slave Ford. He's a domesticated house slave. He has graduated into a domesticated house slave. Uncle Doug, the domesticated house slave. He's not a patriot. He's not a field slave. He is a puppet, but he's a house slave. And a difference between a house slave and a field slave is that the field slave will fight day and night, risk lynching, risk beating, risk shooting to gain his freedom. The house slave will do everything for Master Charlie and Miss Sally. I was lynched at Adamson Barbecue. Josh Walker was lynched at Upper Canada Mall. The guy who was skating in Calgary was lynched. Kevin J. Johnston has been lynched. We're all field slaves fighting, and we'll never stop fighting, and we're going to win too. Doug Ford is not a slave like us. He is a house slave. He is a house slave, and he will go down with his master. This is the Arana Nation.